The global icon of resistance and dignity, Professor Said Mohammed Marandi, joins us now, and we are always delighted to see you, Professor, both because it's a confirmation that the people who've put a price on your head and crosshairs on your back have not succeeded, but because it means that we'll be able to take advantage of your great wisdom and experience, which has grown exponentially, as it has had to do, of the global political situation that we're in. I promise you we will come to Iran, but I know you are vitally concerned by what's happening to the Palestinian people. Now, not just in Gaza. This is an important development that people are slow to catch up on. Murder, torture, kidnap, and land theft is now rampant on the West Bank too. Is anybody going to bring this to an end?
Well, thank you very much for your kind words, George, and I hope to see you in Tehran soon. It's always a pleasure being with you.
Inshallah.
It's clear that nothing is going to happen, nothing is going to be done. It's quite stunning, and it is really stunning that after 21 months of genocide, that the Europeans and the Americans have not even imposed token sanctions on the Israeli regime. And that the breaks that existed once upon a time with regards to the colonization of the West Bank, breaks that were just for political expediency, not because previous presidents in the United States had any principles. But even those breaks no longer exist. So the ethnic cleansing that we're seeing today in the West Bank are probably unprecedented. They are tearing down homes across the West Bank in different towns and refugee camps and cities. Christian, Muslim, doesn't matter. And Western journalists based in Palestine, they say nothing. Western diplomats based in Palestine, they say nothing. They're all quiet because they either support ethnic cleansing or they're just too cowardly to say anything about it. They don't even say it. They don't even post anything on their Twitter accounts, despite the fact that many of these journalists have many followers. So nothing is going to happen. The only hope is the axis of resistance and the broader resistance across the globe. But I'm very optimistic, as I've always been saying during the last couple of years, that the world has turned against the Israeli regime. The Israeli regime has all sorts of problems. The empire has all sorts of problems. But I think that this issue that has exploded in the United States surrounding Epstein, I think that is going to have an impact on all of this, because even Trump supporters, many of them are outraged, and they see the connection between the Israeli regime and the corruption in the United States and what they've been doing to children in the United States for the sake of the Israeli regime, what Mossad has been doing. And so I think people establish a link between what they've done to children in the United States and the genocide, the Holocaust that's taking place in Gaza. It's been downhill for the Israeli regime for 21 months now, but I think that the last 48 hours has been much worse.
Well, in your previous tenure as chair of American Studies, you have frequently educated us about the state of American public opinion, but you are right to say that all bets are now off, that an exponential rise in rejection of the state capture of the United States by Israel is underway. I watched Tucker Carlson, who until very recently would have described himself, maybe still would, as a supporter of Israel, definitely not a political ally of thee or me. But I watched his statement at a conservative American gathering just at the weekend, over this weekend, and He sounded like you and me. His rejection of the state capture of the United States by a foreign power, and a not very savory foreign power at that, a foreign power whose leaders are wanted for war crimes, a foreign power that's never out of the pocket of the American taxpayer, a foreign power that is credibly accused of genocide. And yet the American people are kept in the dark that these people actually rule the United States political class. It's really, really taken off like one of Elon Musk's rockets, don't you think?
Absolutely. I find it stunning. I watched that speech. I watched bits and pieces of it, and then I watched the whole thing. And it was revolutionary. It's not something that I would have ever imagined just a few months ago. And so you see across the board, Americans from left to right, liberal, all of them are turning against the regime. And all of them are seeing that this regime is using American girls, is using them in order to corrupt the United States. Zionism is like acid. It ruins everything. And when people see how the president of the United States today is trying to shut down the argument, and how his own supporters supported him partially because he thought previous presidents were shutting down debate, that leaves Americans with a major question. What do they do about the political establishment of the United States? I'm not saying that the United States is heading towards revolution tomorrow, but this is not sustainable. And I think people in Tel Aviv should be very, very worried, because they're not just despised in Spain. They're not just despised in North Africa or West Asia or South Africa or Latin America. They're despised in the heart of empire. And this is not something that they can ignore, and this is not something that the regime in Washington can ignore. Again, I don't know what the future holds, but I don't see this as ending well for the regime. And I think we're going to have further conflict with Iran. I think the Zionist regime will attack Iran. This is going to make things worse for Tel Aviv. The genocide will continue. It's only going to make people across the world despise it further. The crisis in the West will continue to grow. They failed to end the war in Ukraine. Now it's intensifying through a changing or evolving policy in Washington. And then you have these trade wars going on and intensifying again. I just don't see this as sustainable. And the Israeli regime is going to be a big loser in all of this. The entire West is a loser. The Western political establishment, because they've discredited themselves. I and you and others have been saying that the collective West has been discredited and their soft power has been demolished by what the Israeli regime has done. But as we think that it can't get worse for them, it gets worse. And I think this Epstein issue that has been raised has made it even worse than we could have imagined just a few days ago.
Yeah, the fact that American politicians were raping, because that's what it is, were raping children, legally, were raping children, is bad enough, doesn't get much worse than that. But the fact that an agent of a foreign state was filming it for the purposes of blackmail takes us into entirely new territory, doesn't it? And now we have, partly thanks to the Trumpists who have been talking about Epstein over and over again for years now, when we thought, or they thought, presumably thought, that it was Clinton and co. that were in the frame, have obviously suddenly been told or shown that actually both parties, both sides, if you can call them sides, are as complicit as the other, and that it'll bring down the republic. Alex Jones said tonight, this Epstein affair may bring down the American republic. My goodness, what times to be alive, Professor.
It is quite stunning. And this foreign power has been able to do it with impunity, and even U.S. intelligence agencies cannot touch them. They can do this on American land. I didn't want to use the word because I didn't want to cause trouble for your show. They can rape kids, young girls. And, just a few years ago, we had this whole Me Too movement. Where are all these people now? Where are all these elites? Ordinary people are outraged, but the people who pretended to be outraged, those people who were woke and professional politicians and had NGOs with huge funding, where are they now? They're all quiet. They've all seemed to find something else to do. So they were able to do this with impunity. And now no one is allowed to know who did what, who was involved. And then you have the US president shutting down the debate in the most disgraceful way, not just in the cabinet meeting, but then after his post on Truth Social, he's increasingly looking like a madman, because he couldn't have made it worse through his own speech and through the text that he posted. But they don't seem to understand this bubble of elites. And you were talking about the Christians in Palestine, the Christians in Syria, friends of ours, Christians in Lebanon, Christians in Iraq. Why are these people quiet? Because it's either Epstein or the many other Epsteins that Mossad is using in the United States to capture these people. When senators in the United States are constantly ranting and raving about how the Bible makes them support the Netanyahu regime, these very same people are quiet when Christians are being killed in the Holy Land, when Christians are being killed in their own villages, Christians who've been there, their ancestors were there since Christ, but they're completely silent. It's clear what the problem is. The entire political establishment is controlled by the Israeli regime, and people are figuring this out. Even the most non-political people, when they look at what's happening with Epstein and what they're trying to hide from the public, the very same people who you pointed out came to power ranting and raving about what they're going to do about this case, the very same people suddenly said there's nothing to see here, it's all over, it's all fake news, move on. And people are not going to accept that.
For sure not. Broadening it, maybe even philosophically, I declared yesterday at a big rally in Birmingham that my colleague Chris Williamson and I, former parliamentary colleague, and I, were launching this week a new organization called One SP, One State in Palestine. The time has come for that, hasn't it? Because the idea that after all this, and given the geographical, topographical, demographical fait accompli that have been achieved by the settler state, and given the genocide in Gaza, the idea that there's ever going to be a two-state solution, which all these Western governments remain on paper committed to, even the American government on paper is committed to that, but nobody is serious about it because everybody knows it's a pipe dream that's never going to happen. Can we count on your support in One SP, One State in Palestine?
Absolutely. I follow you, whatever you do, George. It's obvious that from day one, the whole debate about the two-state solution was a facade in order to keep people quiet and to allow the Israeli regime to slowly colonize the West Bank. That was the objective all along. And who did they colonize the West Bank with? They colonized them with the worst of the worst. The most brutal and barbaric of these Zionist thugs have been put in the West Bank. These people are not going to leave voluntarily over any agreement, and that was the objective from day one. There was never the intention to have the two-state solution. All of these, especially these hypocritical European politicians, these EU politicians, they always knew that this was never going to happen, but they always speak about the two-state solution so that the Israeli regime can do what it can do its dirty work and get away with it. And the only way forward today is to dismantle the regime. I mean, that's what it had. That was the only way forward from the beginning. But I think from now, people recognize, after all that we've seen in the last 21 months, people recognize that the only solution is to dismantle the regime altogether. And have a state where, I know this is outrageous to mainstream Western media and Western elites and Western diplomats, but where all people are treated as equal human beings. That is the only solution for Palestine, and it is the only acceptable solution. And I hope that now that things are getting so bad for the regime and so bad for the elites in Washington, that people in our region start pushing harder. We cannot have Erdogan, the King of Jordan, Abdullah. We cannot have Mohammed bin Zayed. We cannot have Sisi doing business as usual with Netanyahu as this genocide is taking place. People in Europe and North America are rising up and protesting, supporting the Palestinian people, yet these governments, these states, these regimes are doing business as usual with the Israelis. Now is the time for everyone, for all of us, to be more active everywhere, to push harder, to put more pressure on governments in our region and in the West and elsewhere to ease the pressure on to force the Israeli regime to ease pressure on the Palestinian people and bring an end to this genocide. And I have no doubt that if the people in our region start putting pressure on their governments, other governments will fall in line across the global South. But when neighboring countries are selling oil, when they're selling goods, when they're purchasing goods from this illegitimate regime, how can we expect African countries or Latin American countries or Asian countries to impose sanctions on this regime? So we have a lot of work to do, and I'm grateful for you and for your colleagues and all the people who participated in the protests. I'm grateful that such people exist, and obviously people like myself have to work harder to keep up.
Finally, Professor, I said I'd come back to Iran. Trump is a wounded animal. A wounded animal, depending on how badly it's wounded, can be dangerous. Are you expecting the United States, never mind Israel, we must expect any day, any minute, sneak attacks, cowardly murders. But are you expecting the United States to further get militarily involved against Iran?
I think it's very possible. I think the only adversary to the Israeli regime is Iran in that axis of resistance. And the way to end the resistance in Palestine is to bring down this axis. No one else is going to do anything about Palestine. No one else is interested in doing anything about Palestine. Some may pretend that they support the Palestinian people, but these very same people are doing business with the Israeli regime. Some may pretend to be supportive of the Palestinian people, but they have American bases on their soil that are being used to support the Israeli regime. So they fund people across the world, they fund cultural institutions and individuals to protect their image, but it's clear today that the facade has fallen, just like with Epstein. Everyone knows where people stand. So it is only Iran in the axis of resistance, and I have no doubt that the Israeli regime will attack, and Iran will hit it very hard, and it will lose in any exchange with Iran, and Iran will not forsake the Palestinian people. If everyone else does, the axis of resistance will not forsake the Palestinian people, and that is why I think it is quite possible that the Americans will try to get involved. But George, the United States cannot get into a war with Iran and win. You and I both know that. When they fought Saddam Hussein, another evil wounded animal, and they defeated him in Kuwait, they brought in 600, 700,000 troops at the height of U.S. power and at the height of the empire, or at least at a time when the empire was much stronger than it was today. It was the beginning of the unipolar moment. And today, they could never muster such strength. And Iran is not Iraq. Iran is a strong, independent country with a leadership that is highly legitimate in the eyes of its people, and it has the capability to destroy everything and all U.S. assets in the Persian Gulf region. And I think that now, and here I'm just speculating, I think it's going to be increasingly difficult for Trump to engage in any serious conflict with Iran, because he has lost the support of his own people over a host of different issues, not just his aggression against Iran and his support for genocide or the war in Ukraine, but because of the corruption that we're seeing today in the United States and how he's trying to hide the truth behind the Epstein case, and people see it. And so that's going to make it a regime that's increasingly delegitimized in the eyes of its own people. It's going to make it very difficult for it to engage in a major conflict with Iran. I have no doubt that the Palestinian people will come out on top, and the axis of resistance will be there for them until liberation comes.